Okay, everyone, welcome to Chapter 8, The Technology of Service. This chapter is primarily going to focus on some specific terms that are located throughout the chapter in the book, and we're just going to dive into some of the ones that I think are most important for you to focus on and really understand what they mean. We are in no way going to cover every single term they talk about in the book, so please review that there, but you won't be quizzed over anything that I am not talking about here. So, alright, first one, point of sale systems, also abbreviated POS. Okay, you probably see that a lot out in your adventures in the restaurant world, or retail, right? So these are used in retail or hospitality operations. Another word for this is the terminal. So the picture on this slide, that is the terminal that we're talking about. It usually is some kind of screen that you can punch in the orders and ring up the totals, and then it has a printer to print out the guest check and sometimes a cash drawer, which is pictured there as well. So these electronic systems have only been around since the 1970s. Which is fairly recent history-wise. So these have significantly increased the speed and efficiency of service, especially regarding how to send tickets to the kitchen. It's a lot cleaner, it's a lot faster. We don't have a lot of errors on the tickets anymore due to handwriting or accounting, stuff like that, because it's already done through the computer. So that's really nice. Very common to have all the terminals interconnected across the property, both inside your one, restaurant, but maybe, if you're on a property with several restaurants and bars, they may be interconnected in that manner as well, so that they can share menu items and sales data and stuff like that. So this is what you'll primarily be using in the restaurant environment. Next version of this is the handheld terminal. Nowadays, it's likely an iPad or something similar to the Android equivalent, whatever that would be, like a small Windows tablet or something. These are used in, these days you can find them pretty much anywhere, even in casual dining restaurants. But in general, they're designed to be used in large areas where it is impractical for a server to be running back and forth to the guest and the standalone POS station. So large bars, nightclubs, patios, restaurants without stationary terminals. Sometimes in our environment we'll host a large party in one of the conference rooms, which is outside of the class act, and that's an ideal environment to use this because you need to think about the amount of time it takes to write down an order on a standard captain's pad for a large party and then walk all the way back to the restaurant or wherever your POS terminal is and ring that in. A lot of time has passed by the time you've taken the order and the time it actually rings in. So in the guest's mind, their ticket time is already running, even though maybe it took you 10 to 15 minutes to ring in the order. So if you can use one of these devices right at the table, it significantly reduces the amount of time it takes to run that process, and then you can just hit send when you're taking the last person's order and it's to the kitchen right away. So that's a real benefit there. Alright, property management systems, also abbreviated PMS, property management system I should say. Located at the front desk, this is a hotel or resort specific software suite. It's used for guest room management, but oftentimes the food and beverage, abbreviated F&B, our sales information will funnel into the PMS. So what this does is it allows everyone in the hotel to have a really clear snapshot of both the room's revenue and the food and beverage revenue for the day, month, year, whatever it is, all in one location rather than having to compile data from the food and beverage outlets and then trying to put that into an Excel sheet manually and combine that with the room's data. So these property management systems are just a bit more robust software-wise, and they can accept these external sources like the restaurant revenue or the banquet and catering revenue or the sales data from Delphi, which is our sales team. They use that to actually book events, and that's where they do all the quoting and stuff like that. So that is a snapshot of there. Again, as a server you won't really have any interaction with this, but I just wanted you to be aware of how this works. Okay, so I've said the word outlet a couple times. We're not talking about the thing you plug lamps into on the wall. This is a specific area of the restaurant or property, such as an outdoor patio or bar. These areas generate revenue independently from the restaurant and are considered different revenue centers. Okay, so really it's anything that is generating revenue that you do not want to be grouped into another revenue source. So I'm going to go all the way to the bottom of the slide here with my asterisk. Think of the term outlet mall. You know, you have all these different stores with it under the same roof, but they're all generating revenue independently. And you need to know what store is generating the most revenue and why, or why one of them is struggling. And so that's why we separate all these different things out. So the food and beverage outlets in our hotel here, the hotel at Kirkwood Center, would be the Class Act dining room floor, in-room dining, Mica lobby bar. So those are the three that are under my umbrella. And then we have banquets and catering, also called banquets and catering, but they're two different things. That is under our banquet manager's control, which is Chris White. And then we have the cafe. Cafe was up on the hill under renovation right now. And then cafe catering. So they do catering around campus to different departments and programs that might want a catered lunch or a catered meeting. And so those two are reported separately as well. Okay, we'll talk about this here in a second. Here we go. So the reporting hierarchy, just so you can kind of visualize all the different outlets here. Let's see if I can get my pen up. Yep. Okay, so here are mine. So these lighter colored ones are all the different outlets. So here are my three. So in-room dining, the bar, dining room floor. This reports up to the Class Act. Okay, Class Act restaurant. Banquets, catering. These two go into banquets and catering combined. And then these two go to hotel, food and beverage combined. And then we have our sister outlets over here, the cafe. So the main cafe, Lynn Hall, cafe catering, these three report up into cafe combined. And then the hotel and the cafe numbers roll up into total food and beverage combined, which then funnels all the way up to the hotel. And then, of course, there's the rooms revenue, and this would branch out over here, but I'm not going to get into that today. So you can kind of see how all this reports up, but what this allows us to do is really dig in and say, okay, food and beverage combined numbers up here, you know, let's say they were really good. I'm not always going to be negative. I'm be like, they were really bad this month. What happened? They were really good this month. What happened? Okay, well, let's look over here. Okay, cafe, their numbers are all in line. Their revenues, you know, met budget. Everything's good there. Okay, so now it must come from hotel, food, and beverage combined. So we'll look down here. Banquets and catering. All their numbers check out, so they're good. And the Class Act numbers are way high. So our high numbers are floating all the way to the top and affecting the F&B combined number. And so we dig in further, and this is why we split out the outlets. So we can say, okay, within the Class Act, what did well and why? Dining room is fine, in-room dining was fine, so it's actually Micah. The sales team booked a bunch of events this month, and the bar is where you make the most money. Liquor cost of goods sold is always low, so we booked 4 more events than we were anticipating, and so all that beverage revenue floated all the way to the top to F&B combined. And so this is why we separate these outlets out rather than just saying, okay, the Class Act did well, or hotel, food, and beverage combined did well. We don't really know why. By separating these things out into different revenue streams, we can really dive in and see what areas are either doing well or doing poorly. This could be, just the opposite too. Okay, we did really poorly. All these other areas are fine. Real life example, Micah, the bar, was under renovation recently. We barely had any revenue, and that's why our numbers don't look good. So anyway, I hope this makes sense, and this is actually a very true diagram of how revenues and costs are reported within the hotel. Okay, so back office, another term here, not necessarily a physical location. I will say that again in case you were to be quizzed on that. back office, not necessarily a room, okay? What we're talking about here is the interface between the POS terminals that you as servers are using and the back office software suite, okay? So this could be a computer in the restaurant somewhere, but it's where the managers or maybe servers will go in and they can look at sales data, such as we have over here, pictured on the screen. It includes accounting, inventory, and payroll information as well, so that's where it'd probably be a manager getting into that information, not just the service staff, but it's everything on the back end of the terminal that needs to be managed. It's also like if a new menu rolls out and we need to add buttons to the POS system, or we need to change pricing, or the button layout is goofy and we need to rearrange that to make it more efficient for the servers. That's all done in the back office software suite. But most crucially, it is where the accounting information and payroll information is stored, right? Because servers and service staff will punch in on those machines. They'll clock in and clock out, and it'll record their tips. So that is the most important role of this. Everything else is kind of tertiary. So here we have an example of a sales report. So this is something that the back-end software suite for us sends us every day, and we can also look in and look at like a web page version of this. So this was from one of our passport dinners. We can see our net sales here in this box for the day. Service charges, this is the amount of gratuity collected for the entire team. And then down here we can see how many guests we served. This is a multi-page document, as you can see, so I didn't include the second page, but then this guest count gets broken out into breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the second page, so we can see where the guests were coming in. We can see the average guest spend, the average check spend, how many tables we had, stuff like that, cash owed. So this is an example of a back office report. Okay, CRM, Customer Relationship Management. This is a database of customer information such as email, phone numbers, dining preferences. That's specific to our world. Basically, it's data about the consumer, okay, and we're going to use that for marketing purposes. So at the hotel, we use this information in our database to email out to guests about passport, holiday specials, other events, new and exciting things that are coming up that they might want to know about. We also use it for post-stay surveys after the guests check out of their rooms as an attempt to collect more information about the guest and what they liked, what they didn't like, stuff like that. So if you've ever received a marketing email in your life, I can almost guarantee you have, and this actually goes for physical mailers as well. Companies out there have your information and they know a little bit about you, and they know last time you dined there, or maybe why you're dining there. Like maybe you're a guest that only comes to certain events, or maybe you used to, you used to go to a certain spot. Let's just Chili's. You used to go to Chili's, once a week for a year, and then you stopped going to Chili's. Well, Chili's a year later, after you stopped going, their marketing team can say, "Hey, Jacob, well, not me specifically, hey, let's run a marketing report to try to regain lost business." So they'll run a report specific to guests that used to dine once to twice a week, and we haven't seen them in 6 months or more. And then they create this special marketing message: "Hey, Jacob, would love to see you back. Haven't seen you in a while. Here's a coupon for a free appetizer with the purchase of an entree." So just self-reflect for a minute. Have you ever seen anything like that in your life? You probably have. Maybe not restaurant specific. It could be retail. But those are targeted messages, and how they send those out are through programs like this, Customer Relationship Management. So again, it's a database full of the ins and outs of all the different guests, their preferences, and then from that we can either send out huge marketing messages or really refined specific marketing messages to targeted groups of people. This is external marketing, is the last point. External, okay? So this is, the guest is not inside your establishment at this point. You're trying to get them in. Which brings us to the marketing client, or pay-at-the-table technology. We're going to kind of roll both of these into one. So the marketing client, not to be confused with CRM, this is in-house, internal marketing. It's a device on the point-of-sale network whose purpose is to display marketing messages to the guests. So think about if you've ever been to Olive Garden. I just use Chili's again. Olive Garden, Chili's. I don't know where else has these. We're looking at the little Ziosk thing. Okay, these devices let you order food, drinks, as it shows here. Play games. I think some of them can even like watch TV or shows these days. Absolutely crazy. They sit on the table with you for your entire dining experience. Okay, you can also pay at them usually. All right, this is the marketing client, and what it'll do is it'll flash photos or videos of like appetizers or dinner specials or drink specials to try to entice you to order more or order another round without having to wait for the server to come over. So it's supposed to entice you into doing that. So marketing client, internal marketing, you're already there. The guest is already there in the restaurant. It's tied to the point of sale network. Okay. So when someone rings something in off of one of these, like you order another drink, it prints out at the bar and then the bartender makes it. So this kind of ties in with pay at the table technology. This is often in association with the marketing clients, but it could also just be a solo device brought to a guest. So we can reflect a little bit here on what some of the advantages and disadvantages are. Personal advantages to me would be efficiency of service. It doesn't require as large of a serving workforce. I guess that would be a number two. So you can reduce your labor spending because in theory, one server can take more tables if guests are winging in stuff on their own. It also frees up guests to pretty much pay and leave whenever they want. So there are 3 times during the dining experience where guests are most impatient. One of them is waiting for the table. Second one is waiting for their food or beverages to arrive. And then the last one, but the most crucial one or most complained about, is waiting for the guest check. So, you're done eating, you're ready to go, you can't find your server, they're running around doing 100 million things, maybe you're just ready to go, or maybe you need to go because you have an appointment or you need to catch something. It's frustrating, right? So this pay at the table technology allows you to just get out. Also think about, families that are out dining and, when the kids are ready to go, it's time to go and they don't want them to get all restless and frustrated either. So by having this device on the table, it allows guests to just kind of check out and leave at their own convenience. In theory, it would also decrease your table turn time. So if people are leaving quicker because they can check out on their own, then you can put more butts in seats throughout the day, in theory. Disadvantages, of course, it's taking away the FaceTime from between you and the server, between the guest and the server, I should say. So some would consider that to be a disadvantage because you're going out to be served, you want that interaction, and this is taking it away from that. Another disadvantage would be that there are a lot of people out there that just aren't technology prone, right? So putting this there and expecting the guest to use it and kind of automating that service could be difficult, and you could be losing a guest base that you previously had if you're trying to implement this type of program. Let me go back to advantages for a second. Another huge advantage of pay-at-the-table technology, probably the biggest one, would be the security of payments, right? So this is actually this is why, in general, this is going this way. It reduces liability on the business. So if a guest hands a server their credit card, the server takes that, 20, 30 feet away, whatever, to the POS station, who knows what's happening to your credit card at that time. They could be writing down the number for themselves, or it could be mishandled, or someone could take a picture of it, whatever. But by paying at the table, whether the server is bringing out a device or you're paying on one of these little Ziosk devices, it eliminates that contact with, or it eliminates the service staff being in contact with your personal information. So you, the guest, know that your information is secure, you've signed out, no one else has access to it. So it's both good for the guest, but then it's good for the business because then the business limits its exposure to any liability claims of fraudulent purchases. All right, menu engineering. So we're going to use product mix, abbreviated PMix. You'll probably hear that out in the real world. PMix. So we're using that information to review and edit what selections you offer on the menu. So here we have an example of a lunch menu item product mix specific to our lunch sandwiches from June 1st to, well, it's the whole month of June. The whole month of June in 2019, we rolled out a new lunch menu, and we wanted to see specifically what lunch sandwiches were selling and if the mix had changed. And it had. But anyway, here's an example. So we're just looking at things. So here's the item, the quantity sold, okay? Total sales from that item. We could, under different circumstances, enter in prep costs here, and so we could see how much it costs to make that item. We don't have that capability in this program right now. So quantity percent sold, so 26% of all sales were the burger. Margin. So we use these numbers to identify what is selling, what's not selling. So we go to the bottom of the list. Maybe something that has a high profit margin, which again for us is calculated separately on a different sheet. So is something that's not selling well, like maybe say the fish tacos, it's further down the list. We want that to be higher up. We want that to be right under the Class Act burger because it makes us a lot of money. How do we get that up there? Can we reduce the price of this by $1 or $2? Maybe that'll shuffle its way up the list. Maybe stuff like that. Or something like the hummus witch, we have that on the menu for our vegan guests, but if this were something else, like pork tenderloin isn't selling as well as it used to, is that something we either need to change the set on? Like, do the people not like the toppings on it? Are they just burnt out of pork tenderloin? Should we take that off the menu and replace it with something else? These are the kind of questions that you want to ask when looking at this. Same with the burger. Okay, the burger's selling really well. It's 26% of all sales. So 1 out of 4 guests, even more than that, 1 out of 4 and a little more guests coming into the restaurant for lunch order a burger. Okay, are we making good enough margin on it? Could we raise the price by $1 or $2 and make even more money on this item since clearly it's in high demand? Okay, again, this is why we look at the PMIX. These are the kind of questions that we're asking. Software as a service. This is any time a software application is basically rented, okay, accessed via subscription for the restaurant. So OpenTable or Resi are both online reservation management systems that are great examples of this. But really, it's any time that you do not physically own the software that you are using. So you find this in all forms today, like Spotify, Apple Music, Netflix. Those are some social examples of software as a service, right? Because you don't own it, but you pay to access it, and that's what some of these programs are, like OpenTable and Resi. And then another one, our POS system right now is Oracle Micros, and we own the terminals for that, but we do not own the licensure for the program itself. So we actually pay a monthly cloud computing service fee to be able to use that. So that's another example as software as a service. Product management software. This is mainly used by the back of house, so the chefs and the cooks there to keep track of all their recipes and how much product is in house. So we use a product or a software product called Chef Tech. And so some of these product management softwares can actually integrate with the point of sale system so that servers can pull up recipe information right on the point of sale so that they can either self-educate if a guest has a question about an allergy or something like that, or they can even print out recipes right there on the point of sale, or maybe it has a picture of the item there for the servers to look at. So that's very cool. Ours does not right now. Chef Tech does not integrate with Oracle. So anytime we want to look up a recipe or something like that, we have to go back to a separate computer that has that program on it. That's the point of this. Again, usually managed by the back of house. All right, a bank server. This is someone that has cash on them, okay? And this is a very common practice for front of house operations, is to ask servers to come in with $30 to $40 in various bills and maybe coin if you need that, so that when a guest on the floor hands you cash to check out, you can quickly make change, always out of sight of the guest, but you can quickly make change from the bank in your own pocket rather than having to go and find the till of the business. So it's not only more efficient for the guests, but it's also a security feature for the business. The fewer people you have, rummaging their hands through your cash drawer, the less likely it is that there will be instances of theft or miscounting, stuff like that. Cash overages and shortages is what we call that officially, but I mean really what we're looking for is, the cash in the business needs to balance, and the best people to really manage that are the servers. So that's why we do that. Okay, the kitchen display system, KDS. It's used to electronically display tickets, cook times, and firing cues to the kitchen. So we have a couple of these screens. Our kitchen isn't really big enough to actually need this. We have it here for your benefit. But there are plenty of kitchens out there, both in quick service restaurants, but also just large format kitchens where stations are very spread apart, such as large resorts and hotels, stuff like that, where these are very handy. And so what it does is, you can either make it as simple or as complicated as you want, but basically you go into the back end of this and you enter all your items that are on the menu, and you can enter various cooking times to those, and then you assign them to different stations. So maybe Garde Manger has a screen, Sauté has a screen, Grill has a screen, desserts, the pastry station has a screen, and then when the servers ring these items in, either the whole ticket can show up on everyone's screen, or just the item specific to that station can show up. So Garde Manger would only have the appetizers and salad show up, and Grill would only have items that need to be fired for Grill show up, etc. You can also, adding another layer to this, you can set it up to pretty much automate. So when a server rings in an entire 3-course ticket with various items, the computer knows what items need to be fired first from what station. So the appetizers go to the Garde Manger station first. It says, fire appetizers A, B, and C, so they do that. They get it out, and then another ticket pops up in a couple minutes on, Sauté and Grill screen. It says, okay, now fire, these 3 or 4 entrees for the table, and then, if they took the dessert menu right away, or took the dessert order right away, which isn't likely, maybe like 30 or 40 minutes later that would pop up on the dessert screen. But the point of this is it's kind of like a self-expoing system. So yes, you still need someone to, stand in the window and make sure that the food's coming out correctly, but they're not constantly barking orders to stations that may be very far away from each other in the kitchen. So that's the point of that. I believe that does wrap for Chapter 8, Technology as Service. Tune in next time. I do not want to keep those this time.